B2 Frage Nummer 4. Was hast du das letzte Mal gemacht, als du in die Stadt gegangen bist?
Hier achte auf
Using the imperfect tense for common verbs
Adverbs, time phrases.
and when to use accusative or dative with the preposition in. Hier sind einige Ideen.
Letzten Samstag bin ich mit meiner Schwester in die Stadt gegangen. Wir sind mit dem Bus hingefahren.
Sie wollte eine weiße Bluse kaufen und wir sind in ein großes Kaufhaus gegangen.
Dann gingen wir in eine Buchhandlung, weil ich ein Buch von Philipp Roth suchen wollte.
Ich habe das gefunden und musste noch ein paar Hefte und Bleistifte kaufen.
Ich gehe nicht sehr oft in die Stadtmitte, da es ziemlich weit ist.
Ich habe mich vor 2 Wochen mit meinen Freunden in der Stadtmitte getroffen und wir sind ins Theater gegangen. Nächstes Wochenende werde ich nicht in die Stadt gehen. Did you spot different tenses for the past here? We used the imperfect as well as the perfect. And the imperfect verbs were as follows.
Sie wollte eine weiße Bluse kaufen. Dann gingen wir in eine Buchhandlung. Ich musste noch ein paar Hefte und Bleistifte kaufen.
Although you'll have been taught the perfect tense first, the imperfect is just as common, especially for verbs which you hear very often. That's what I mean by common verbs. So, she wanted, or I had to, and of course, we went. You often see this single verb form, and unfortunately you're just going to have to learn if you want to use all of them, which would be unusual. They do only usually come up in spoken German for very common verbs. But if you are going to want to know how to write them and spell these imperfect forms, you're going to have to learn them. So I suggest you just pick a certain small number which you use occasionally. Perhaps these are the ones you use. Sie wollte, that's the imperfect form of sie will. Dann gingen wir, that's the imperfect form of dann gehen wir. And ich musste, that's the imperfect form of ich muss. We also had some adverbs and time phrases in this passage.
Letzten Samstag, dann, nicht sehr oft, vor 2 Wochen, nächstes Wochenende.
I would say that 4 of those 5 are pretty easy as an English speaker to work out. They're very, very similar to our words. The only one which would cause you some trouble and almost always is used in a listening or reading to throw you off is vor 2 Wochen. It doesn't mean at all what you may be thinking if you're thinking for 2 weeks. No. Unfortunately here it's 2 weeks ago. And you'll see this with a time in the dative case, because vor always takes the dative. And so you might have vor 10 Jahren, vor einer Woche, or vor 2 Wochen here. It means 2 weeks ago, 10 years ago, or whatever we're talking about. We're just going to need it, the time to be ago. We also had a lot of examples of the preposition in, and as you probably have learned in class, you can have sometimes the accusative or dative. Here are the examples, and let's see if you can work out in your head which is the situation for the accusative and which is the situation for the dative.
Wir sind in die Stadt gegangen. Wir sind in ein großes Kaufhaus gegangen. Wir sind ins Theater gegangen. Ich habe mich vor 2 Wochen mit meinen Freunden in der Stadtmitte getroffen.
Did you spot what the difference was? The first 3 are all in the accusative. So, in die Stadt, no change from nominative here because it's feminine. In ein großes Kaufhaus und ins Theater, those are forms of the neuter. So, ins here is a shortened version of in das. And accusative is always used when we're talking about motion towards somewhere. And there's another clue, and you may not have made this connection, but in the perfect tense, if the verb is sein, the auxiliary verb is sein, like here, wir sind, then you're almost certainly going to have an accusative case, because you're talking about motion towards. That changes your verb from haben to sein in the perfect tense, and also changes the case after in. So the exception of these 4 is Ich habe mich vor 2 Wochen mit meinen Freunden in der Stadtmitte getroffen. I met my friends 2 weeks ago in the town centre. Because we're not talking about a motion verb here, we're just meeting friends. Physical act of meeting, shaking hands and so on doesn't have any movement in a particular direction, so we're now in the dative case because this is a case of where the action is taking place, not where it's moving to. So no longer in die Stadtmitte, which would be into the town centre, but in the town centre, in der Stadtmitte. An easy way to remember this, which might help you, is where to, a Q, and where at, dat. So if we're talking about motion towards somewhere, where to, that rhymes with a Q, and where at, where's the action taking place, where at, dat, dative.